Well, good day, guys. Thank you again for joining us here at the Wealth Academy. I'm quite excited today. I've got a friend, brother, fellow property investor. He's also a coach here at the Wealth Academy. He also runs his own, property mentorship. He's going to tell us all about what he does. But there's one thing that he likes to say. He likes to say that he wears multiple hats, right? So he's going to tell us about those hats. And I'm quite excited to have Mr. Lesetja Toona. Mr. Lesetja, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, and how are you, my brother?
I'm awesome, man. Yes. So Mr. Toona is a property investor, right? And that's what really connected the two of us. We initially met at a Sapin event, I remember. Yeah, and we've since connected, done stuff together, and we're still gonna do, quite a lot of stuff together in the future. So, but Mr. Lesetja Toona, tell us about yourself. The viewers wants to know who is Mr. Toona. He's an investor. He's a this or that. So tell us about yourself, sir.
All right, now thanks a lot, and hi everyone, family tribe. Yeah, my name is Lesetja Toona. I am a property investor, but first and foremost, I'm a father. To my two lovely kids. And I'm a husband. Now, the last time I said this, someone asked, were you told to say that?
I actually have a question. Why did you start with the father instead of the husband? But, that's a story for another day.
Yeah, no, I'm a father to my two lovely kids, and I'm also a husband to my wife. I'm not in a polygamy marriage. I'm a property investor. I'm a 9 to 5. I'm a senior manager in the public service, so we do the so-called 9 to 5. And whenever we talk about the 9 to 5, I always tell people, and the reality is, by the so-called 5 o'clock, some of us will still be at work. I never leave the office before 6 o'clock. So I do the 9 to 5 on a full-time basis, and afterwards I do property investor, because they always say, what you do after 5 o'clock, determines your future as well. So that's basically what I do. I'm a property investor, have been for quite some time. So, and I'm also a mentor and a coach, because I believe that the knowledge that I've gained thus far, a lot of people can actually benefit from them. And some of the mistakes that some of us have made, those that are coming after us, they don't have to repeat the very same mistakes. So in brief, I don't know where to start, but in brief, that's who Lesetja is, and I'm also a member of the Wealth Academy. I'm proud to say that, and so we're looking forward to really taking it to the next level, especially this year in 2023.
Awesome. Talking about the 9 to 5, I remember, I was already selling properties as a real estate agent. I felt like, people were, they were in BE, we've got Transnet, right? And you had guys there earning 30,000 and above, and I remember thinking to myself, these guys are earning so much money and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know that, with that pay slip, they could really build a fortune for themselves, right? In the long run, building a property portfolio. And I envied these guys because they didn't really know what to do with it. I remember thinking to myself, hey, maybe I left my job too soon because, qualifying for bonds as an entrepreneur is a different story versus you being an employee, right? It's quite easier when you're an employee as versus when you are an entrepreneur. So, so talking about that 9 to 5, so before we get into how you're managing that, maybe talk to us about, why property. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could have done. You could have been in logistics. You could have been in mining. I mean, we're here in Gauteng. Mining is a big thing. And, there's a saying in the Eastern Cape. It's a Xhosa saying, right? So I won't say it in English. It won't have the same, but they say in Gauteng, inyama ipheli kuphela izinyo lendoda. So in other words, the meat never runs out, but it's the men's teeth that actually get destroyed. I don't know. I mean, I've been in Gauteng. I actually see the opposite, right? But tell us, why property? Why did you choose property as your means to creating sustainable wealth for yourself and for your family?
Well, I don't think it was a deliberate move. It's something that did not happen naturally. Firstly, I was looking for a house, normal residential house. And, I realized that there were so many things that I did not know, so many things that I did not understand. That's what happened. So what I did, I went to view because you could imagine what happens when you go to view a house. It has been staged. And the intention is you should be able to sign an OTP.
Sure.
Because you see yourself in that space. You may not have that furniture, but you already see yourself in that space.
True.
So that's basically what happened with me. So, I went with my brother because I was staying with my brother at that time. And I loved the apartment. I did not understand what was happening with apartments or what it actually involves staying in sectional titles, which I did not know at the time that it was sectional titles. So sign an OTP because I loved it. But Tuesday, Wednesday, I changed my mind because I realized that there's so many things that I did not understand about the whole buying process. I went there, knew nothing about having a deposit, knew nothing about the transfer cost, knew nothing about the bond, although they said they would apply for the bond for me. So that's basically what happened, how I actually started. So I then cancelled fortunately they didn't give me a hassle. Sorry. I then cancelled the whole transactions. Instead, my research then led me to be a candidate agent because I was not a fully fledged agent, but an intern agent. I joined one of the companies. Eventually there were two at the time. Eventually, I started with one and moved to another one. Became an intern agent. For a period of a year, I only managed to sell one property. And then I was there. I pitched up every Sunday, every Saturday. Took my car, branded, and I went to. The intention when I joined that, it was not necessarily to make money.
Sure.
It was more of the lessons.
Sure.
And I think the lessons that I've learned, throughout the journey, have actually stood me in good state, moving forward in terms of how I, where I am even, today. Because what really happened thereafter was I then got a very good principal, understood where I was actually coming from, understood that I was new and I wanted to learn.
Sure.
I remember one of the things that she, would drive around with her in the neighborhood. One of the things that she said to me was, can you look at that house, Lesetja? Okay, what's the difference with that house, for an example? It had a lot of for sale boards. Then she said to me, what does that mean to you? Oh, okay, it means they want to sell. So he said, that could be a sign of desperation. Because if you give it to a lot of agents, so it means, to some extent, you really want to sell that house. It's been on the market for quite some time. So those are some of the lessons that I have learned. So even when I drive around as a property investor now, I see a lot of boards. I smile.
Sure.
And say, this could be an opportunity. Not the case, but this could be an opportunity.
Sure.
So I walk in and say, ask them, why is the property on the market? And we begin to have a conversation. Not ambushing them, but just to begin to have conversation. So those are some of the lessons that I have learned throughout the journey that I still apply even today.
Sure.
So that's basically where my property investment journey started. And it wasn't until 2019 where I took a conscious decision that I'm going to make this a business.
Sure.
I'm going to focus on this and make it a business. And that was just before COVID hit. And that involved, having to attend mentorship, attend the free sessions. The free session leads you to another session. You pay a small amount, a small fee. That leads you to another until I went to, the last stage, which was a mentorship. And I said, I am prepared to go all out because I want to learn about the industry and I want to be a property investor.
Sure.
So I got a mentor. I got lessons also, to then identify the type of people and mentors that one needs to have from that kind of relationship that I had with my mentor. So it's been quite a journey. But why property? Like I said, it was more of a natural progression, not a conscious decision that I took. But why property? It's one of those, I think they said about 95% of wealthy, keep their wealth in property.
Sure.
So you need to have a property of some sort. I know things have changed now, but I also remain that I also believe that property remains a very fundamental tool that you could use to preserve and create wealth. Not only create, but also to preserve wealth as well. And you could easily transfer it to the next generation.
Sure. I fully subscribe to that. I'm involved in quite a few different things that are quite popular these days. But I fully subscribe to the notion that real estate is really the cornerstone for wealth creation. For me, my first exposure to property was Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And immediately after that, I got a book by Donald Trump. I don't know, I can't find it anymore in the bookshops. Somebody borrowed it. I don't know, it's missing now. So a book by Donald Trump that says Think Like a Billionaire, where he's talking about why property is a cornerstone for wealth creation. One of the things that I've learned to appreciate now is that, the context of real estate investing with these guys from America and the context of real estate investing in South Africa, though some of the fundamentals are similar, it puts you in the right mindset about investing in real estate. But then at the very same time, the context is quite different, right? So, I like the fact that you mentioned that you got, mentorship, that really then taught you the ropes in terms of the local context of being a property investor. So, so tell us about your, maybe the last 2-3 years in your journey as a property investor. What are some of the mistakes you've made? What are some of the wins you've made? And what have you learned, in that process, right? So because the whole idea here, as you said, is that we want to make sure that, people learn from our mistakes so that they can avoid them. Wisdom can come in two ways. It can come at your own expense, or it can come at somebody else's expense, right? Of course, if you're really, really wise, you wouldn't want it to come at your own expense. You want to use other people's lessons, right, to avoid, the same mistakes. So what have you learned over the last, few years? What are some of your wins? What are some of your, deals that didn't really go well, but then you walked away with some lessons instead of walking away with some rands and cents?
Look, I've paid school fees.
Sure.
I've lost money. I regard that as school fees. I've lost money on potentially not only good deals but excellent deals. And it came at a time that once you've when you are learning, you want to implement the things that you're learning.
Sure.
So one thing about me is go big or go home.
Yeah.
Why should I take the middle of the road kind of approach?
Sure.
So it's either I go all out or I don't do it. For an example, last year, which is 2022, we start as 15 guys and say, guys, let's start a property venture.
Sure.
Eventually may end up alone or two guys. Because you talk about it, we're not doing it. Last year, what I did is I went to an auction, because as you know that I mostly buy properties at auction. I went to an auction, went there, had a deposit, paid the deposit, registered, and found an excellent deal. But I had not viewed that property. And I did not tell people that I did not view that property. I relied on the picture and the fact that it was a reputable company. So I didn't tell people prior. Because a lot of people would say, yeah, this is I want to buy with you, I want to work with you, I want to do this and that. But comes deliver, a lot of them don't pitch. So I went there. I didn't have money for that matter. Paid the deposit. I became a successful bidder for that particular property. I called two friends of mine. One said to them, first one, you've always wanted to see, you said you wanted to work with me and work in property. I need about 400,000 to pay for the deposit. Are you in? Are you out? Here's a brochure. Have a look at it. We need to pay that money tomorrow. Okay, let me think about it. Call the second one. Here it is. Here's a brochure. Look at the numbers. Look at everything. Do you want to work with me? I've got a lot of people that are interested to work with. So the second one came and say, I want to work with, let's go for it.
Sure.
We don't even have a company at that time. I signed the OTP in my personal name and say I'm signing it on behalf of a company still to be incorporated. So I'm saying this just to illustrate that the more you talk and you don't act, and it's like when you've got all this knowledge. If you've got the knowledge and you're not acting on the knowledge, it's an insult to the people who actually don't have that knowledge for that matter.
Wow.
Because you've got the knowledge and you're not applying it.
Wow.
So you're not different from someone who can't read, who doesn't have that particular knowledge as well. So that's my mantra. It's either I do it and I give it my all. My wife knows sometimes I would even have sleepless nights. I say, in the morning she would say, you are so restless. What happened? I said, no, I'm working on a particular deal. Or there's this thing that I want to do. Mostly it's related to property. There's this thing that I want to do, or there's this deal that I want to do. And I'm trying to get people that I can work with. Or I need to find a way of structuring it so that it's a win-win for everyone who is involved. So I give it my all. Like I said, it's either you do it or you don't. So just to answer your question, what are the lessons that I've learned? One, I've paid school fees. And I'm prepared to share those lessons. And I think a lot of people who've actually paid the school fees.
Sure.
That's why we go into mentorship and coaching. And we also share on social media some of the lessons that we have learned, so that you don't have to repeat the very same mistakes that some of us made. I lost 80,000 rand on one deal. You don't have to. To someone else, okay, it's a lot of money for me. To someone else, that could have meant that their world has actually come to an end or came down crashing. So I've paid school fees, and I have learned to value friendships, and I've learned to be a very trustworthy person.
Sure.
Because if you come to me and say, listen, I've got 100,000, I've 10 people down, because there isn't that synergy between us.
Sure.
Because I want us to have that synergy. I want us to have that common vision of where we are going.
Sure.
It's not about money. Money is the last thing on my mind. It's about how do we structure this so that it becomes a win-win.
Sure.
But if you're going to use me, or I find myself in a situation where I don't think that we're going to benefit both of us, I'd rather not to do it.
Sure.
But I think those are some of the lessons that I have learned. I have networked, and I think the beauty, if any, out of COVID, was that it gave us an opportunity, one, to re-strategize, and two, to network and build our network. Part of a mastermind now with some guys who are in property. We've got a retreat, in fact, now end of Jan, where we go out and plan for the whole year. So I am part of that group, people doing different things, but we come together and say, how are we planning to have, what's the plan for 2023, and how do we help each other? So one of the advice that I perhaps can give people is, be around people that are doing what you want to do.
Sure.
If anything, that are even doing better than you, because you don't want to find yourself in a room where you're an expert or you're better than everyone else, inverted commas.
Sure.
So yeah, I think those are some of the lessons in general. Some may not necessarily be in property, but more in life in general, but they are relevant when it comes to property business.
Sure.
And also take your property investment journey as a business.
Sure.
Not a hobby.
Sure. Yeah, that's powerful. Take it as a business, not as a hobby.
It's a business, yeah.
Now, so I was just saying that there's an issue with context when it comes to these guys from overseas, right? And a lot of us, fortunately or unfortunately, that's how we get exposed to property, right? It's through these real estate investors from outside, Robert Kiyosaki and many others. Grant Cardone is one of them. But then the issue is when we try to implement what these guys are saying without having the proper context and proper mentorship from the guys who have been investing in property in South Africa, understand the legal framework, understand how finances work here, because I think they're quite different. And then there's people who are mentors, right? You're one of them, and there's many others. I remember looking at another prominent mentorship program I mean, the amount was just over 100,000, if I'm not mistaken, one of the packages. And people might look at that and think to themselves, this is quite a lot of money. Am I really gonna get return on my investment and stuff like that? I want you to speak to the value of finding a mentor, if you really want to take the property investing game seriously. What have you found? Has it really worked for you, in terms of paying that kind of money for mentorship? Would you recommend people wanting to get into space invest that kind of money in their knowledge?
Yeah, look, mentors and coaches are quite important in this, not only in property business, but in many facets of life. Whether you, talking about a career coach, whether you're talking about a personal coach, whether you're talking about a physical trainer, for an example. So you can either do it the hard way, or you could use a mentor or a coach to work with you. I remember when I paid, it was about 150,000, but we were two, it was the two of us, so we paid 75,000 rand each. The first mentorship that I did. And I remember a colleague of mine said, that's a lot of money. But I said to him, I can actually make that money from one deal. So the beauty about property is, depending on the knowledge that you have, you could actually decide now and say, I want to make 100,000 from whatever deal that lands on my table. My target is to make 100,000. You can actually make it.
Sure.
So it means if someone comes and say, here is a deal, you look at the numbers at a high level, potentially your profit is about 50,000 rand, and there is no way that you could actually squeeze that bone. So you're not going to look at it.
Sure.
So I always say property, you write your own check. You want to make 1 million rand from a deal, you can actually make it.
Sure.
You want to make 2 million rand, you can actually make it. That's I went into a partnership. I'm in a partnership now. We opened a company in 2021. The first deal that we did with the guy that I'm referring to, I referred earlier on the property that we bought at an auction. We, in the space of a year, because of the knowledge that I have, we were able to buy 3 properties. And the estimate value of those properties, depending what value you may want to, evaluation method that you may want to apply, it's about 10 million. And I was reading a story about someone else who started in 2004, and his portfolio now is about 20 million. That I said, within a year, we were able to build a portfolio. And I remember when we started, we had a session and I said, this is what we can do. 3 years, we said, we could actually have a portfolio of about 36 million. He said, I'm crazy. And I accepted that, because if you're normal, you cannot achieve extraordinary things. So we're able to build that portfolio. But it is based on the knowledge, the mentorship that I went to, the coaching that I had. And and a part of sifting, part of the process will involve, you may find that you and I are not compatible. But it doesn't mean that the property or the mentorship does not work.
Sure.
It could be that someone may not necessarily work with you. It could work with someone else. But the importance of a mentor, and there are a lot of guys who are pretending to be mentors, because a mentor, it ought to be someone who's in the field. Because the reality is, none of us were prepared for COVID.
Sure.
So you could imagine if your mentor was someone who last bought a property in 2018, was not actively involved in the property. Now, you've got a tenant who says, I can't pay because I was impacted by COVID. How do you respond to that? Because some of the things you may not have the answers to that at that time. So you may need to pick up the phone and call your mentor. And your mentor could be someone who then, because they are also experiencing that problem, they may already, probably at that time, be formulating a solution.
Sure.
Then say, I have realized that in my portfolio, 30% or 20% of my tenants have actually been impacted by COVID. Now they're saying 10% said they can only pay half, and then the other 10% said that they're not getting any income, and you can't evict them.
Sure.
And how do you respond to that? Because if you don't know,
Sure.
how do you then say, how do you make sure that you've got someone who would make sure that you do what is right, and you also do the right thing as well?
Wow.
So that's where the importance of a mentor and a coach comes in that regard. So they are able to assist you to navigate the waters. But I always say, with the guys that I work with, I want you to lead. I'll be behind you. So I don't want you to come and say, today we're going to talk about structuring. I'm more like a teacher.
Sure.
And I tell you about what's structuring. I want you to go and research about structuring and come and say, I've got my portfolio. I read about trust, I read about companies, I read about this. What is the best vehicle that you believe that I should use?
Sure.
Given my unique circumstances.
Sure.
Then we look at that and we look at your circumstances as well.
Sure.
And then from there, I'll be able to advise you. And by the end of the day, the decision is yours.
Sure.
So I think that's where the mentors come in and their importance in your journey. And the mentors, if I said within a year, I was able to build a portfolio of 10 million, and I'm talking about one partnership, because I mean multiple partnerships as well.
Sure.
So if someone comes now and say, how do I leverage on your knowledge? So it becomes easier, because from all this partnership and all these deals that I have, that we've concluded, all of them have lessons, and all of them have been unique. I can't say I know it all,
sure,
but I think I'm better than someone who has never bought a property. I've
just read
books. Yes, only have a knowledge.
Sure.
They've not applied that knowledge.
Sure. Wow. So in other words, your investment in mentorship has yielded returns far greater than what you've actually invested.
Undoubtedly.
Sure. So maybe I want us to wrap up with this thought. Someone who says, look, my credit score right now is out the window, right? I hardly have any disposable income. But it, getting into property is something that I really want to get into, for the long term. I see all the benefits and all of that, but I don't have, I hardly qualify for any bond at this stage, right? What would you advise such a person? Do you think that they should start with a coach and a mentor, start learning about property right now? Or should they wait until their circumstances are together and then they're able to immediately act on the information given? What would you advise such a person?
Well, I don't think there is a definite answer.
Sure.
It mainly depends on how much do you want it.
Sure.
Because if your desire to achieve your goals far exceeds any circumstances that you may find yourself in, you will go ahead. If for example, you've got an impaired credit record, one, you need to work on it.
Sure.
Get your credit report and understand what is wrong with your credit record, and start and have a plan on working on that.
Sure.
If all people pay them, it's an honorable thing to do. You can't take credit, and because I don't want to work with you, if you're going to take money or borrow money or borrow money from me, then the next thing you're not going to pay it.
Sure.
Pay those that you owe. That's the first thing. So work on your credit record. And secondly, how can you leverage on what you have learned? Because you could either source properties, you could either go into partnership. So it all depends on the knowledge that you have. But your desire to want it should exceed all these hindrances, inverted commas, that may be there. So you need to have that desire. We always say your why. Understand and know your why.
Sure.
But have that desire. Have sleepless nights. There's no way that you can sleep 8 hours if you know that there is a bigger goal for you to achieve, and you know that you do not have money. So you need to be an honorable man or woman. You need to start talking to people, because there are people who've got money, do not have the time. There are people who don't have the time but don't have the money.
Sure.
So at some point, you may be the one that will have to bring them together, and then say, I will go and identify opportunities. We then go into partnerships.
Sure.
So there's so many ways that you could go about it, but it all depends on your why. It all depends on what is it that you want to achieve out of this journey. And I think at some point, people also need to be honest with themselves.
Sure.
Because you cannot say, I've got an impaired credit record, I don't have as much knowledge, I want to build a multi-million rand portfolio.
Sure.
When you've never even done one deal.
Sure.
So there are so many intricacies in property, in the entire value chain.
Sure.
Because at some point you need to negotiate.
Sure.
You have the negotiation skills.
Sure.
At some point you need to identify opportunities. When you speak to a seller, you need to identify opportunities and say, in some instances it could be something that scares off people.
Sure.
For you, it should be something that excites you and say, now here is an opportunity for me to actually assist this particular person. So I would say, work on your credit record and start implementing the knowledge that you have. There are a lot of guys, like I said, who are on social media. The content is there, but you just need to sift that content.
Sure.
And then from there, if you can, which I would actually encourage it, get a mentor as well, because it'll help you. But don't just get any mentor. And also when you get a mentor, you need to be prepared to put in the work.
Sure.
It's not the mentor that will go and look for funding for you, because you must come and say, I have secured a deal, I don't have the funding.
Sure.
Or I have secured the deal, I've only managed to get 10% of the funding. Can you assist me? Can you make calls? That's where your coach and your mentor would then come in, because there could be people that I know that there's a friend of mine perhaps who said their mom went on pension, so they've got about 10 million, they don't know where to invest that money.
Sure.
And for example, you're coming here, you've got a deal, that's yielding about 40-30%. Why can't I say, let me go and speak to that friend of mine, and then the mom must then invest with you, perhaps partner with the mom. So there are so many ways that you could actually go about it. But I think, invest in yourself. But like I said, your why should be more, pushing you than anything else.
Sure. Well, I like that. Your desire must be greater than any obstacle that you have. Napoleon Hill calls it the white hot burning desire. Nothing can stand in the way of someone who's got a white hot burning desire. Get a mentor, learn as much as you can, but most importantly, implement. The other important thing about getting a mentor is the fact that property is so vast, it's so varied, right? You might find that your mentor could point you in a direction where you could do some flips, get some money, pay off your creditors, fix your credit record, and you are in a position to start making even bigger deals, right? So thank you very much, Mr. Lesetja. We're looking forward to many more. There's so much knowledge and experience that we can glean from you, and we're looking forward to diving into the intricacies of buying an auction, because a lot of people know that that is said to be a place where people can find bargains, but a lot of people actually do get their fingers burned in trying to buy from auction. So there's quite a lot that you're going to learn from Mr. Toona. I'm quite excited to have him here. And, so he was talking about the issue of credit record. You might have seen that we do have a video that we have uploaded on the YouTube channel. You can check in the description, that talks about, how to improve your credit rating. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to more videos with you. So guys, if you found value in this video, make sure that you subscribe, make sure you click on the notification bell so that you don't miss any of these videos. We're going to be bringing them to you every single week. Stay tuned for more. Cheers.